Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
We're 17 minutes now after the hour of 7 o'clock, and let's talk HR with Hermap. I love this segment, and you know that for a fact. Every Wednesday morning, right here on Morning Barbados, that's where we get a chance to talk to HR with Hermap, and talk to some real HR professionals. Joining us this morning is a past president of Hermap, Shane Howell, and also the Membership and Activities Chair, Atoya Hines. Good morning, both of you.
Hi, good morning, Pearson.
Good to see you again, Shane, and good morning to you, Atoya. Welcome indeed. Atoya, we go fast-paced, but we get real in-depth in what we talk about here when we talk HR. And today we want to talk implementing effective learning and development initiatives. Some would say for businessmen, that should be a no-brainer. But oftentimes, we don't do what we thought was a no-brainer. So, Atoya, if you could explain to me, what's the real purpose behind these kinds of initiatives in terms of implementing effective learning and development?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So, learning and development initiatives is a function within an organization that is responsible for empowering and aligning employees' goals and performance with specific skills that drive best business performance.
In a nutshell, that's what it is. But how critical is it to the business?
It is very important. We would have found positive changes in employees who receive quality training and improvement towards their on-the-job performance.
Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah.
I get you. Shane, so why aren't we doing more and more of it? Why aren't companies doing more and more of that?
All right, so great question, Pearson. And I think we all know that, especially in these times of economic difficulties and so on, companies are actually cutting training budgets as opposed to actually investing more in training. I think the reason for it, and we as the HR practitioners to an extent have to accept some of that blame, we have not done a sufficient job of selling the value of training. And when I say selling the value of it, I think we all can appreciate that it is important. But at the end of the day, our bosses think in numbers, they think finances. And what we don't do is that we don't cost the value or the return on that investment in training. So most leaders see training as an investment. So I'm spending $10,000 for this program, but what am I getting in return? So we sometimes communicate the program will cost $10,000. What we have not communicated is that the return that you will see is $30,000 in business or $15,000 in savings. So when you send a manager to training and you invest in that manager going and doing a program in supervisory management or leadership in some other form, because they can engage your staff better, there may be better attendance records, there may be higher productivity, there may be less disputes within the organization costing the business time and effort and so on and so forth. So I don't think that we've been able to quantify effectively the value of training. And so for that reason, persons see it as a line item that can be cut, as opposed to something that is consistently adding value in the organization.
The other part that a lot of employers tend to look at too is having invested in you, Shane then leaves me. And I feel then as though I have thrown money down a well. So how do we turn that mindset around?
Right. So, I mean, there's a quote. I'm trying to remember the quote verbatim, but essentially it speaks of, imagine that you keep the person and you don't train them. What can they potentially cost the business if they're not effective in what they're doing? Vis-a-vis looking at it as you invest in them and then they leave. They're a greater risk if you keep them there and you don't train them. So let's look at it from that standpoint. But essentially, what we need to do again is to go back to showing the value of training. If we can communicate to leadership that there's value in training persons, don't let's think about if they go. But if we don't train them, there's safety issues. We don't want that. We don't want an accident on the job. We don't want the injury. We don't want the loss of life. Therefore, we have no choice but to train. If we don't have the training, that customers have a horrible experience and they defect, they go to the competitor, and it is more expensive to try to win back a customer than to keep one that is there and wants to do business with you. So you can't afford to not train because this has bottom line implications for the organization. Again, if we can put numbers to it, if we can say this is the value of it, if we can say that an injury will cost us $15,000 or $100,000, people pay more attention. I guarantee you that.
I could agree with you on that for sure. Atoya, what does that process look like when it comes to a business making the decision to implement one of these initiatives, effective learning and development? Explain for us and for them who are watching as well, how do you do that? What does it look like?
It's not like 5 W's: the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is it that require this training? And as Shane rightfully said, you have to put numbers to it, so it must be measurable. We all know what gets measured gets done, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
want who is going to have this training, because in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, we want to measure of having that training, right? If you're looking at managers, looking to see if they're having 360 degrees, how have they improved since their last 360-degree evaluation, right? If you're looking at reducing costs, we're gonna look at who we're training within that cost center, who is fit most, and who is going to drive that sales within that cost center. The why are we new program that we're implementing? For example, we have QuickBooks. We're moving from QuickBooks into a new payroll system or a new payment processing. Why are we doing this training? Or are we doing it because it's compulsory, right? What? What is the content of the topic? Because oftentimes persons attend training and they don't understand the benefit of it. And this is why training is not always resonated with the employee. So what is it we are training? What is it specific to the person or relevant to the person's job? When will we need these persons to attend training? This is very important because we need to have all stakeholders buying into this training. For example, a supervisor and the managers of that particular person. How long is that person going to be away from their actual task that they're doing? How is it going to affect the business on that particular day, right? Where is the training located is the next important thing as well. Is it going to be online? Is it going to be face-to-face? Is it going to be face-to-face or online? Is it a webinar? Is it short-term? Is it long-time? So we need to understand all of these different variables when we are building out learning development initiatives, because we need to be measurable. We need to also build in feedback as well, because it doesn't make sense we always having training and we just ticking the boxes. How was the training facilitator? It was good. How actually are we going to measure this training, right? So we will recommend, if possible, a pilot phase, whereas you actually test the learning and development initiative, how you're going to go before you actually implement it, so that you can iron out any, hiccups or any kinks that may be in there before the actual training is rolled out.
Who's responsible for driving this process?
Good question. Oftentimes the bulk is placed on HR, but I have news for you, Pearson.
Tell
It is
me.
HR in a combination with the management team and the supervisors as well. We need everyone on board as we build out training for employees, because it is not one particular person who's going to benefit, but the entire organization who is going to benefit from this training.
You know, Shane, oftentimes when you set the criteria for determining who gets the job, you have to come with a certain number of years of experience, this level of certification and the like. Is that now critical given the fact that the company is also going to be doing its own effective learning and development, training and development?
Yeah, I would still say definitely. At the end of the day, there are certain baseline criteria in most cases, and let's look past even for an entry level job, depending on what that job is, there's still certain fundamentals that you want that employee coming in with. Now, what happens is that on the job, you can get fine tuning to suit your particular environment. You can get, obviously you have specialized technology processes, etc. I think what we've seen, or what really constant friction is that employers are sometimes saying that employees, graduates from school are not coming with what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, there is value in that, because you would hear some employers saying that degree programs, for example, are not practitioner oriented enough. So persons have, concepts and they understand the principles, but they don't know how to apply it in the actual job.
Yes.
I mean, real life example, when I first graduated, I understood the relevance of training. I understood what training was, essentially what it looked like. But asked me to design a training program, and I didn't understand it. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand the principles necessarily or the application of human learning and how to apply that in the design of a program,
Mm-hmm.
understanding attention span and all of these different things and how that fits into how you design a program. But my employer, fortunately, understood that I had the foundational skills and they were willing to then invest in me to show me the way. This is how you design and get into those practitioner elements.
Yeah.
What I would say, therefore, is that the baseline criteria, the qualifications, the experience is essential, but employers have to be willing to invest in kind of being a finishing school where there needs to be tweaks to the person's skill set
Mm-hmm.
and to get it to where they need to get the person to. So there's room, there's space, so to speak, for both, definitely.
You're, you're quite right. You know, we walk into the business with theory. The theory, we've got the theory done well because we passed our exams. We've been tested on the structure of the theory. But then you have the practical side of it. Now, how do you apply that theory? I mean, we encounter that here in this business of mine, where in principle, you know, you push this button, you have balance and control, all of those kinds of things. But how now do you present? How do you engage an audience? And those are soft skills that don't necessarily come through that educational program at a particular institution. So it is the balance that we're talking about. Is everyone trainable?
You would like to
I'm not
be.
sure if that one is directed at me, but
I
that is
ain't sure who could answer
you, you,
that.
you bowling bouncers know. Is everyone trainable? Everyone is trainable, but not in every area. So essentially, that's where you have baseline criteria. If you assess a job, you know. So, for example, I am trainable. Can I be a doctor? Can I be a surgeon? I would say definitely not. I don't have the motor coordination to be able to do that job, especially surgery, effectively. So we need to accept that we all have skills, educational background, etc., that allows us to do certain things, but there are certain things that we may not be able to do, or at least the amount of time and investment means that it may not be worth the business's time and our time. So it's really about getting the right fit, because ultimately, if you get the right fit, both parties tend to be more satisfied.
And that's where the who, one of those W's at Toya, right, comes into play. The who, when we're developing and designing our learning and development initiatives, and that, as you've correctly said, goes in conjunction with the discussion with the supervisor, the manager, so you are able to identify who requires what needs to be done and to be fixed. Now, Shane,
Absolutely.
also, you know, there's a lot of mobility nowadays in business. People are moving for whatever reason, whether they've sought greener pastures or they're just fed up with where they are. And so that mobility can put a real big hamper or damper on any particular business from which that person is leaving. What do you see we can do so that we're able to retain good quality staff based upon our training and development that we're talking about?
Okay. I think so when we talk HR, you hear training, you hear recruitment, you hear engagement, and it's almost as though these things are looked at in silo. They're
Mm.
not, they're all related. So ultimately, if you train a person, you invest in them. You as a business, for the most part, don't want to see that person leave. That person is obviously more marketable and will look at what opportunities in the market make more sense for me. Yeah, that's natural. What you as a business have a responsibility for is trying to create a more engaging environment where that person believes I can add value here, I can benefit from being here. And that benefit is not only financial, that benefit is also with respect to the future and growth and so on. So, one of the things that unfortunately we don't do sufficient of is succession planning. And that is essentially saying to a person, there is a career track for you because we see you as having the potential to be here in the future and to grow with us. And that in itself, I think, helps to give a person greater confidence. I want to stay here rather than jumping from company to company and not knowing if I will succeed and fail. If I'm in this environment, it's a healthy environment. I'm happy. I see that there's a future now for me. They're treating me fairly. Why should I leave this to go to another company that I don't know if I will like it there and if I will do well there? But we don't do that. We don't say to Pearson, you're doing a fantastic job. We see you having a future. We're going to invest in you so that by X time we think you should be here. and then you can possibly get to there. And you, Pearson, then look at that and say, you know what, this makes sense. I like this. So I'm going to stick around and work with you to get there. We don't do enough of that. Beyond that,
I love it.
on a day-to-day basis, we don't do the things that make employees feel valued. We don't do the things that create true engagement. So beyond the parties and the little things that we do, when it comes to the things that matter to people, that make them feel as though they're heard and listened to, we don't do that well enough. And that in itself is a catalyst for people to move with some of
Right.
those skills that you've invested in.
What we don't do well enough also is to create that area of trust, because sometimes some people look at you and say, I hear you, you're talking about putting me on this fast track too because you see me having this future, but I don't believe you. I think you're just saying that to me right now because you don't want me to leave at the moment. So what are those conditions that need to be right so that when I talk about having succession planning, that this individual can trust me, that when I say that you are next in line or you are whatever down that line, that that person can truly feel that I'm really interested in their development and future. Atoya, you want to tackle
So
this
we
first?
so we look at training and development feedback. We know that companies would have invested in performance evaluations and the performance reviews, but that happens once a year, sometimes, or every 6 months, right? We don't wait until that time comes around. We actually have a continuous process. The supervisor or the manager actually meet with that employee. You have like connect conversations to see where that employee is at, where that employee is struggling. That's called the human touch. You don't have to be an HR professional to have that human touch. Every manager or supervisor ought to have it. And if you do not, then they can be trained in that particular area, because that is what helps to have employees buying. There's mentorship sessions that you can actually have too as well with employees. You can partner, having had those conversations with employees, you can pair them with senior members within their team or within the organization to help mold that employee, to help guide that employee in the work that they actually are doing or you are preparing them to do, so that when they get to that point in the transition period, that they don't feel lost. They feel valued as though they have been seen every step of the way. You look at what training programs that they actually need. Sometimes you may have to, yes, we do internal training, but you may have to say, let's do external training. Let's look at what BIMA has to offer. Let's look at what UWA have to offer. Let's look at what membership opportunities are there available for this employee to help them grow and achieve in that particular area. We need to listen to our employees, Pearson. I find that sometimes we don't often do a lot of that, and employees actually communicate very clearly within the organization. Shane, do you want to add here?
Yeah, so the only thing that I would add to what Atoya would have said, because essentially she spoke around, the activities that give the person the confidence that the business is serious about me. But adding to that, or what supports that, is consistency and action. So if you have a situation where the employer in the past has said one thing and does something else, that fractures the trust that you were speaking about, Pearson.
Yes.
I think over promising and then under delivering. So one of the things that I think we need to be very cautious about, even with succession planning, is not to get in the language unless you have a really structured system of saying that you are definitely next in line. I think what is better to say is that we are positioning you that when that opportunity comes, you should be ready for it, because there may still be a few hurdles or still be a few steps, or they may have two or three candidates that kind of neck and neck, head and head. um, if I promise you something, so let's say that I promise you in the next 12 months, you will be candidate. And at the 9 month marker, something crazy happens that you're
Yes.
involved in that derails that. You still have the expectation that you're next in line.
Yes.
And when I say no, that can't happen. You're frustrated. Other people watching, they have an opinion on it as well. So I think it has to be around, we are positioning you, we are getting you better. It should give you have an advantage because you may be getting access to training and opportunities that other people are not getting, but it doesn't guarantee. You still have to deliver. You still have to show that you're the best candidate for the position. So you're perfectly right. We need to be very careful in the language that we use, how we design our programs, the messaging around the program, so that we don't create an expectation that's unrealistic. But at the same time, it is one that gives persons confidence that they're well positioned to be ready when that time comes.
Timing, because you can't dangle that carrot before me forever. You promised me that I am being positioned. And so I expect that at some point I will be positioned. So what is a real way to manage that expectation on the behalf of the employee?
All right, so let me use a practical example of where you have to be very deliberate with your messaging. So let's say, for example, Pearson, that there's a candidate that Atoya is being positioned to replace, and we say, at when this person retires, and we have a sense that this person will retire at the end of 2022. Now we know that in some cases employees extend their time, they may not go off on retirement, etc. If you are very clear and it's 100% that that person is leaving at the end of 2022, then you can pretty much communicate to Toya, well, this position will be vacated, and therefore this is the timeline that we're looking at, right? We'll be making a decision around that timeline. For
Right.
Toya, then, when it gets there, she can, if she's not successful because maybe there was another candidate vying, she can at least check off in her mind, my window is gone. Do I want to stick around for the next window or do I want to make a move?
Correct.
Conversely, though, if that person at the end of 2022 says, I'm not ready to, I want to stick around, and you know that they were a high value person, you don't want to just get rid of them, and you're extended that time, and you promised Atoya, again, that goes back to fracturing that
Yes.
trust. So you got to be careful. You got to know, are these situations beyond my control, within my control, etc., so that we don't, for the purpose of trying to keep the person, overpromise. Because I see it a lot, or sufficient times where we overpromise, but really and truthfully we don't know. Or there's so many other factors at play. So I think we just need to be honest. I think if we start from a position of honesty and tell people, look, again, I can't make that promise to you,
Yes.
but I can definitely give you a realistic sense of what is going on. People respect you more, even if they have to make that move later on. It was transparent throughout the process.
You're quite right. And that is now where it becomes a little bit easier to explain to them the whole process of the effective learning and development, because part of it in that response is to be able to say, we can position you in this kind of way through these kinds of courses so that when the next opportunity appears that you are adequately prepared for it. So there's a lot to be done and there's a lot to discuss still. And for those who are watching and who are into HR or supervisory management and all those kinds of things, you can contact HRMAB. HRMAB is there to lend support. That's what the organization does. And membership comes with benefits. So for those of you who are not yet a member of HRMAB, sign up. And you will get all of that experience there coming from Shane and from Atoya, from Joan and her whole team to be able to help you better manage people and processes, because people are not just units of production, they are people. And so we must be able to get the best out of those in whom we invest. I want to thank both of you for joining and again exciting me on this topic of effective learning and development. And I wish you only the very best. Shane Howell and Atoya Hines of HRMAB, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a
You're
great day.
welcome indeed too.